right, welcome back. Josh Bitar here for From the Stands, joined by one of the favourite men I always love talking to, the great Eric Nicksick. Eric, thank you very much for joining me, man. I appreciate it. As always, firstly, how are things with you?
Everything's good, man. Just busy. So we're hitting that stretch. I was gone for 10 days out in Paris with Francis. I'm home for like 2 weeks. Then I leave on the 13th to go over to Saudi. And I'll be on the road for another like 2.5 weeks. So just that mental preparation of like, man, we got a lot of stuff ahead of us. But that's the name of the game, man. So I'm excited to get back to work.
First of all, I've always wanted to go to France, so I wanted to ask you, how is France? A beautiful place. You were there for a little bit, but how was it? How was your time in France?
It was cool. It was pretty chill, to be honest with you, bro. Like when you're there and you're training, like your focus is basically your 2 training sessions that day. So our time was like you wake up at noon, and then we trained at 2, did strength and conditioning, maybe caught a nap or something, but then our team practice is at 10 p.m. So it was hard because like you're trying to eat food, and then it's like 1 in the morning when you get done with team practice, and then but I made it a point to like go out and see the sights and walk around and get out to see the city. But man, it was really cool to be out there.
Awesome. Well, obviously you were there for Francis and checking in on him and how he's doing with his preparation for Renan Ferreira. I really feel like we've just sort of seen Renan in his sort of fights in the PFL, really knock guys out. I feel like coming into this fight, Francis, in terms of from an MMA standpoint, has evolved more as an MMA fighter overall. I know he's been out for a little bit of time, but I feel like, especially that Cyril Gane fight, he really showed the evolution of Francis Ngannou. And I feel like coming into that fight, it plays a big factor, and a bigger factor than I think people realize, that Francis has that ability to go to the ground if he wants to now. Do you feel like Francis throughout this time has evolved even more so than he did, when he last fought against Cyril Gane a couple of years ago?
Yes, but I also feel like in different ways, like definitely with his boxing, that's the obvious answer. So when I was out there and we were running some routes and doing some stuff, it's his hand speed. It's just something different now than what I remember it being when when we were fighting Stipe or Jairzinho. The power is always going to be there, but the delivery and the mechanism of the way he does it to me is a lot cleaner, a lot more accurate, a lot more efficient. Those things really matter when it comes to any type of striking, but it's certainly when you're in the boxing element, right? The cleaner the striking, the better. But the one thing that he's been doing really well that I'm happy with is his counters are built into his defense. Meaning, so if he's catching something off his lead side shield, his right side's cocked and loaded and the cross is coming. The counters are coming right off the defense, which I think is a good telltale sign of a guy who's improving in the boxing element. When you talk about the wrestling, man, to me, it's about reps and continuing to stay on these reps. And that's something he's done. Like, obviously, he's focused so much on his boxing in the past, but every time he's in the gym, he never did. It's like, oh, I'm just going to spar today and just strike. Like he made it a point to go in and wrestle and get that work in to keep him sharp in that area.
What's up, guys? It's Josh here From the Stands, and look, I know you're in the middle of a good little interview that we're currently doing, but I want to take a second of your time just to give a quick little shout out to today's sponsor, TrainAid. Obviously, they're big supporters of us, like we are of them, and today they're sponsoring this video. And look, I want to let you guys know about a little product they do, their premium product, TrainAid Hydration. It's the best hydration formula on the market, guys. I'm not gonna lie to you. And look, if you don't believe me, ask guys like Israel Adesanya, Alexander Volkanovski, Leon Edwards. You ever heard of these guys? I mean, they're the top athletes in the world, and they're all taking TrainAid Hydration. It really is the #1 formula in the world for hydration, and in the summer months here in Australia, I mean, it's something that I think everyone should be taking. And TrainAid have been very nice to give us a discount code, a very healthy discount code as well. I mean, it's a nice little discount code. If you use the code FTS15 at the checkout, they will give you 15% off. We'll leave a link to their website in this description of this video. And yeah, check them out, guys. Please support them because they are supporting us. Cheers.
Yep, definitely. And I guess, Francis being able to make his return after 2.5 years, and like you talked about the boxing, when we saw Conor make his return against Cerrone from his fight against against Khabib, the stance that he had was very boxing heavy, heavy on that front leg and very much used that boxing style and that boxing stance. Have you noticed a difference at all in Francis's stance, obviously training so much boxing? has there been any shift? Because obviously he always had very good footwork and very elusive on his feet, used his movement very well as well. Have you noticed any difference in how he sort of his stance is and those sort of things implementing that boxing training?
Well, it's a great question because we didn't want to try to change his stance too much in boxing, getting away from our MMA stance. The reason why is we try to stay unorthodox to a regular boxer style. We wanted to kind of keep an MMA stance so a boxer felt like, oh, this is a little bit more uncomfortable for me. But it kept us available to be able to switch stances better rather than keep our lead side shoulder closed in. So we had a little bit more of a movement to where you watch Francis slide over to southpaw a lot, mainly because we weren't in that traditional closed boxing stance with the lead foot pointed in. And when you do that, you expose yourself to that calf kick and the outside low kick and everything else. So in theory, it made a lot of sense to try to move him that way. But we knew that, we couldn't make up 15, 20 years of boxing. So we wanted to do what we already did really well and try to be unorthodox to most orthodox style boxers.
Yep, definitely. And obviously the heavyweight division is on fire right now. We have two of these big heavyweight title fights pretty much within a month of each other. And obviously Stipe Jones is locked now for 309 in New York, which I pretty feel like everyone already knew that. But I feel like everyone's kind of writing Stipe off. It's already like a foregone conclusion that Jones is winning this fight, which I can see, that from a standpoint of, we haven't seen Stipe since he fought Francis coming up 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago now. So it has been a while since we've seen.
Oh, man, it's been that long.
It's been a long time. So I guess, with this foregone conclusion that Jones is already winning, how do you see that from your standpoint? Do you think that's a fair assumption? And I guess, how do you see a fight between Stipe and Jones playing out?
I don't think any of us would be surprised if John ran through Stipe because of that lapse in time. But I don't think that fight is as easy as people think. And I think that is really predicated on what Stipe has been doing in the meantime. Because he's not active, that is it's the unknown. We don't know what he's been doing. Inherently, because he hasn't been fighting, we all think he's just been sitting his ass on the couch and not doing anything. Yeah. But he might have been doing a lot of things to evolve or become better. I'll say when I broke down the tapes between the DC fights, Stipe added different elements to his game every time out. And I thought he looked the most improved and polished in the third DC fight with a lot of stance switches and a lot of shake steps and slides. He almost looked like a different fighter every time he fought DC. Obviously he got beat the first time, was losing the second fight, and then came back when he started hitting those body shots. And then the third fight, a completely different fighter. So it was a lot of fun, and it was a headache to try to game plan against him because of the evolution of Stipe Miocic. So my point to you, Josh, in answering that question is I have to assume that he's only added new tools and done new things in this time frame to only become better. So with that being said, I definitely give Stipe a shot at winning this fight, especially because I think he is that, on paper, on the resume, the heavyweight GOAT, in my opinion, the one of the best to ever do it. But it's a matter of what has he been doing in that time since he's been off.
100%. Another guy, Eric, I want to touch on is Sean. He put a thing out on Twitter saying, UFC event planning, I have a great idea. Let's send Sean to a fight for a championship in a foreign country where the government absolutely hates him. Now, I know the government isn't too fond of Sean down here. Well, speaking on that, though, he got probably the biggest fan reception I think he'll get anywhere in the world, which is a credit to the Sydney fans. But Morne Vissa, Dricus' coach, came out, I think, yesterday or last night, and sort of said that, he believes the UFC will make Dricus and Rob 2 in Sydney in February for the middleweight title should Rob beat Hamzat. And he's sort of, maybe discrediting Sean's win against Costa as just having one win, whereas Rob has 3 if he beats Hamzat. Have you guys heard anything on the state of where things sit with Sean? Because obviously Sean was promised the fight by Dana, and I think it's a fight that is definitely warranted considering I thought he won that first fight. But regardless of that, have you guys heard anything on that situation?
Yeah, we heard we're next. So that's from Dana. I know Hunter said that. Sean had met with Hunter, and he said we're next. We're just waiting on a timeline that Dricus is going to be available. So we're waiting on Dricus. That's the nice thing is that his coach Dricus, none of these guys get to call that shot. It's the promotion.
Yeah.
So, can Rob leapfrog because it's in Sydney? Yeah, absolutely. Rob goes out, has a great performance against Hamzat. Can he leapfrog Sean and take that fight because it is in his home country? Yeah, absolutely he can. But from what the promotion has said, that Sean is next, and that's all we can do. We can take them for the word. And have they changed their mind on certain things? Sure have, but we got to make sure we're ready when that opportunity comes.
Absolutely. I still feel like Sean and Dricus too in Sydney makes sense because Sean gets a massive fan reception in Sydney. Dricus is a closer flight for Dricus to fly to Australia than it is to the US. It's a closer time zone for him. Sean's love there. I still feel like that fight makes a lot of sense to even do in Sydney from a timeline perspective.
100%. We'll go anywhere, bro. Like Sean, we don't care. It doesn't matter. Like Sean can say whatever the hell he wants, but Sean wants that fight back. And we got some good juju out there in Sydney. And like you said, man, the fans loved him. It was one incident that the government probably didn't like him too much for, but all in all, man, it was one of my most amazing experiences I ever had, win, lose, or draw. The city of Sydney was unbelievable to us. And especially after winning, it would be one of my most fond memories and one of my favorite trips of all time.
Absolutely, man. Me too. Covering the sport, that was one of the best experiences I've ever had myself. Speaking on, I haven't spoken to you for a little bit, so I just, obviously Israel came up short against Dricus in Perth, and hearing how Izzy is now. I heard him on Rogan yesterday, and he seems like he's in a good place, and the belt doesn't sort of phase him at the moment. He still wants to have that one back with Sean, but the belt isn't necessarily the number one priority right now. He just wants to fight and evolve and get better. From a career perspective and as a coach, if you were his coach, is there anything, an opponent or someone that you can see that stands out that you go, that'd be a fun fight for Israel? Because from my mind, I feel like if Hamzat beats Rob, I feel like Hamzat Israel is a fun fight. I don't necessarily think Hamzat gets a title shot or is warranted a title shot after that if he beats Rob. But I think Hamzat Israel is a fun fight. I just wanted to get where your head would be thinking on that.
Yeah, if I'm Izzy, I'm looking at probably Kyle Bahalio. I'm looking at Eminoff, somebody like that, because I think those two guys are warranted for that opportunity. They've earned that right. I think Eminoff's a fight away or 2 fights away, and I think Kyle's 2 fights away from having that opportunity to fight for a title. So I'm looking at one of those two guys as a way to get back in. Or it's a good fight for those guys to show where they're at in the pecking order of the top 5 in the 185 pound division. So we're talking Sean, Dricus, Rob, Hamzat, Izzy, and it's kind of a race right there to see who's going to be in the top. And Kyle and Eminoff, unless they make those two fight one another, I think it should be Izzy fighting one of those guys.
Yep, definitely. Eric, I saw you speaking recently on the invite from Khabib to go to one of his training sessions, and how that sort of gave you some ideas to switch some things up at Extreme Couture. Just out of curiosity, I'm just wondering, what were some of the things that you thought needed to be changed within the gym?
It wasn't necessarily like what needs to be changed. It was just more of as far as efficiency goes throughout the practice. What I mean by that is like the practice starts on time, ready to go. Everybody's prepared. Everybody's on the mat. The warm-ups are efficient, not guys aren't dicking around. They're not, talking. There's no wasted reps. And when you start to understand the value of showing up on time and getting the proper reps, so let's say if you have a 1 hour practice and you show up 10 minutes late, then you're probably missing out on, let's say, just give it a round number, 50 reps, right? In that 10-minute span. And then if you're consistently late, and then you're missing out on an 8-week camp, you're missing 10 minutes on each practice. Let's say over that 8-week camp, you're missing out on, 1,000, 2,000 reps. Those things add up. And I think that once you start understanding the ripple effect of the way that you practice and the way that you show up and the way that you look at the situation every time you go to practice is like, hey, this is going to reflect on how I fight. I think it shows a little bit more urgency and really professionalism along those lines. Like, we like to have fun, and that's always going to be part of our thing. The music's up, but it doesn't mean you can't be efficient and be a professional. Khabib's style is a little different from ours, of course, but I think when you look at the meat and potatoes of what he's doing should be emulated throughout all the practices that anybody does.
Definitely. Eric, last one from me, and I want to leave you on this. I watched Mairon Santos on the Ultimate Fighter finale. That kid is something special.
Yeah.
So much so that I watched the fight and I've never heard of Mairon before. And obviously he was fighting one of our own, Khan Offley, who's a bigger name down here in Australia, and what Mairon did was incredible. That guy has world class striking, and that was like and I saw you in his corner, and I was like, oh, okay, this is Eric's guy, all right. And then what you guys did, man, was incredible. And I just get for the fans that don't know Marion, I guess, what are your thoughts on him and his future and his potential within the UFC?
He's a baby. He's been training with us for about 3 years now. The sky's the limit for him. The credit really goes to his athleticism, his skill set, and then Pedro and a lot of the guys that he's worked with for years. He's just been a kid in the room. And I think that when you're in a room, the talent that we have in the room is going to only elevate you. And every day he shows up and he goes with the guys like Julian Erosa and Dan Ige and Jeremy Kennedy and Kai Kamaka that are all within his division, Aljamain Sterling now. It's only going to help your level. And when you're competing against those guys, and not only competing, but you're winning rounds, it's the confidence level that when you show up to be able to fight on a night of when it's the biggest night of your life, I think that he's prepared mentally to go out there and do what he does. I see him probably potentially in the future being a 155er just because he's young and he's growing into his body. The weight cut for him isn't the easiest, but hopefully now that he's in the UFC, that he has the access to UFC PI and their nutrition team and strength and conditioning, that'll help that weight cut become a little bit easier for him. But he's still a puppy, man. Like, he's going to be growing. The power carries over. I put him in there with Zell Huber. I put him in there with my 55ers all the time, Natan Levy. And he's winning these rounds. He's holding his own. So whether he fights at 45 or 55, the sky's the limit for the kid as long as he keeps his head on straight, and I think he will.
Oh, wow. Awesome. Well, Eric, look, man, I appreciate your time as always. And a shout out to Verse Us with Eric Nicksick is on all platforms. Get that while you can, because that's a good, great podcast, man. I've been listening, and you guys are doing well. It's really funny, and
Thanks, brother.
It's an enjoyable listen, especially one with Sean and Bilal and Aljo and all these guys you've had on. It's been fun. It's been cool seeing you behind the camera a bit more and on the microphone. So check that out, guys. When you can.
I appreciate you, man.
Of course, man. It's awesome.
Try to peel the curtain back a little bit and let these guys see, like, a little bit more behind the scenes of what we go through and stuff like that. So I thought it'd be a fun podcast.
It's awesome, man. You guys are doing well. So I love seeing it, man. Always a pleasure to get your time, and look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Good talking to you, brother.